Questions? All right, now Laurie is the dietitian over at the diabetes program. So she will kind of take over from here.
Okay, talking about putting together a meal. Now, do our meals always look like this? No, because sometimes we don't have a hot meal. We might have a sandwich. What do we do for breakfast? What's breakfast typically? It might be toast, it might be cereal, it might be, how do you figure these foods in? Does everybody, are you comfortable knowing what a carbohydrate is? What foods have carbs in them? Okay, so we know that chicken is a protein. The carbohydrate foods are your, anything that's you think of as starchy, which would be what? Potatoes, bread, pasta, rice, so your grains. So what's made from grain? It's your cereal, your crackers, your pasta, your rice, and then anything made with like cornmeal, so corn, because corn is a grain. What else has starch in it?
Fruit.
Fruit has some sugar in it, but it's still carbohydrate. Yep.
Some vegetables have corn.
Yep, starchy vegetables. So your corn, your peas, and what I'm getting at is your beans and your peas, your dried, those dried legumes that are pretty high in starch. You know, when we look at portions and how much starch is in a serving. What else has starch or sugar in it? Oatmeal. Yep, oatmeal, which is a grain, a whole grain. Any
Cream of wheat.
cream of wheat is a grain. So any of your hot cereals or your cold cereals. What else do you think has either starch or sugar in it?
Any kind of milk.
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 Okay, so milk and yogurt, which is, most people go, oh, there's milk, there's sugar in there? Yes, it's lactose. It still ends up in your bloodstream, though, as glucose, okay? So when we look at what you don't have pictured on your plate is we have a glass of milk. This is one serving of carbohydrate, an 8-ounce glass. We count as a serving of carbohydrate. We have a potato. Now, it's not one of those ones that you get from the restaurant, okay? The ones you get from the restaurants are huge.
5 pounds.
Yeah, those gigantic big potatoes. No, this one's about the size of a tennis ball, okay? We call this a serving of carbohydrate, okay? And then we have a small apple.
Milk, is that a percentage or is that considered whole milk? Did you go 1, 2?
Oh, yeah, so what happens when you
Yeah,
change
does
the
that
number?
make a difference?
No, the carbohydrates still are in there.
Stay the same,
What they
but
take
what
out is
percent?
the fat,
Fat.
okay? And what are we looking for? Well, because diabetes is not just sugar, but people that have diabetes, we have complications of diabetes, which is the development of heart disease. We would encourage you to use the lower fat milk, 1% or skim, if you can. Some people really have trouble with the 1% milk. You know, try it. Give yourself a little bit of time with it. Usually by the time 2 or 3 weeks of using it, you're good. You've gotten used to it.
I drink it fat-free.
You do fat-free, which is the skim.
Doesn't bother me at all. I've
Okay.
been drinking it for 4 years.
I think the most difficult part for people using fat-free or low-fat milk is when they color their coffee
Oh,
with it,
yeah.
because it kind of looks gray. And so
It does.
that's probably the worst part of the changeover. It's just the color of their carbs are different than fat. Fat has, when we talk about energy in foods,
Oh, you're talking about the sugar in it.
yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
Right.
milk has
Right.
protein, it's a combination, whole milk has a combination of protein, fat, and carbohydrate. When you take out the fat, now fat has volume, so people that drink whole milk, they might have 12 grams of carbohydrate on a label. We're going to talk a little bit about label reading in a bit. When you drink fat-free milk, the carbs are higher, because when they take out the fat, there's more carbs and protein in it, in every cup, because the portion is still the same, it's still 8 ounces. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. People ask me that. Why are there more carbs in fat-free milk? Well, when they take out the fat, what's going to fill up the glass? Carbs and protein. Okay, does that make sense? Now, does anybody have an idea of how much carbohydrate they should eat at a meal? That's always the biggest question. 30, 45, yep.
50.
50.
Don't ask me why. Beyond me, people would die for that. 50.
Now, what you need for energy is that, how do you think that might be different than what Louise needs for energy?
I really don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know.
And it really is
And to
an
lose
individual.
47 pounds
Yeah,
with 50 plus 3 snacks.
yeah.
And the snacks have to be 20 carbs.
Oh,
I don't understand it myself, really. I don't understand it.
When you look at how much energy needs to go in, it's really different from one person to the next. Gail is part of our support group, and she did really well when she first came to see us. She started kind of sticking to 50 grams of carbohydrate at a meal, and she lost 47 pounds.
Right.
And her blood sugar has really returned to normal. She does a really nice job at managing her blood. Some people, to have to think about, oh my God, I got to count these carbohydrates.
Right.
So now we're going to take a different approach. If we're not going to count carbohydrates, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of use our body size, our hand, as a measuring tool, okay? So typically what we count as a serving of carbohydrate is about half a cup. That's what fits in my hand, okay? My hand, if I put a half a cup measurement in here, my hand would just scoop around the end of it. So a handful is about a half a cup, okay? If that were mashed potatoes, or if that were a small potato, a 3-ounce potato, that would give you 15 grams of carbohydrate. If I had a small apple about the size of a tennis ball, I can fit a tennis ball in my hand. That's about 15 grams of carbohydrate. If I had a half a cup of corn or peas, same thing. It's about 15 grams of carbohydrate. What changes is fruit. Some fruits have little water in them. Some fruits are loaded with water. Now, what fruit comes to mind when I say it has a lot of water in it? Watermelon, exactly. So the portion for watermelon, the serving size for watermelon is about 1.25 cups. That's about 15 grams of sugar. Now, how about raisins? What do they do? How do they make raisins?
they
They dry grapes, right? So they take the water out, but the sugar's still there. So what's the serving size for raisins? Anybody know?
a very,
2 tablespoons.
yeah.
So 2 tablespoons of raisins has the same amount of sugar as 1.25 cups of watermelon. So the fruit you have to pay attention to a little bit more. But other than that, most of your starchy foods, it's a slice of bread, and it's about 1/2 cup of starchy food, whether it's potatoes, corn, peas. The only problem with, the only other products out there is your rice and your pasta. That's really tends to be a real popular item on your dinner plate. And so the portion for those 2 products are a little bit smaller. It's about 1/3 cup. So if you check the back of your plate, how we like to put plates together, we try to do a corner of the plate with your starch, a corner of your plate with your protein. Now, proteins don't have any sugar in them. And then to fill half your plate with vegetables. Now, these vegetables are a little different. We didn't talk about these vegetables. These vegetables are not corn and peas. These are everything else, okay? It's all the low-carb, low-calorie, high-fiber, loaded with vitamins vegetables. And so if we filled our plate, half of it filled with these low-carbohydrate vegetables, a corner of our plate with our starch, and then a corner of our plate with a piece of meat, chicken, or fish about the size of the palm of your hand. So here we go. We're using our hand again. Your protein portions, you're looking at about 2 servings of protein a day, about the size of the palm of your hand, okay? For me, my hand is about a 3-ounce portion. You have a bigger hand, so you get a bigger piece. Lucky for you.
That's what I was gonna ask, everybody's hands are different sizes,
Right.
what do you?
But you have to look at, if somebody has a big hand, they probably have a bigger frame and they need more energy. They
Yeah, they
have a
can.
bigger body, and so they're gonna need more protein, okay? So think of it as your hand size. So 2 servings of protein about the size of your hand. Now, which ones are your protein portions? What are your protein foods? We talked about chicken before, fish, yep. Cheese, eggs, yep. Any kind of, yogurt and milk is kind of a combination. It's protein, but it's also carbs. You can count it as part of your protein, but you also have to count the carbohydrates. Because when we talk about managing, we got to look at managing the sugar in along with your medicines to keep you in balance. Okay.
So you shouldn't have yogurt as a dessert.
You can, if you want, because when we talk about how much carbohydrate is a serving, now if we were going to have milk or yogurt, that would be one of our servings of carbohydrate. If we're sticking to 3 servings of carbs at a meal, we have 1 here, and we have 1 here. Now, if we don't have yogurt or fruit, then we can have more potato. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, how much carbohydrate is good? That's a big question. It depends on how long you're going to go between your meals. Are you going to have a snack? How much energy do you need? Are you exercising? Are you sitting around? If you're just sitting and you're going to have a snack, you might do well with 30 to 45 grams of carbohydrate. She does very well with 50 because that's her energy, that's what she needs. Guys, you need more. You have much more protein, you need more energy, so you're looking at 45 to 60 grams of carbohydrate easily, so 4 servings of carbs at a meal. And then it's just a guide. It's just a guide to go by, because what you actually need is really, it's a big experiment. You start somewhere, so plan on maybe trying to go with about 3 servings of carbohydrates at a meal, and for you 4. And then work on, okay, how do I feel? I haven't had any low blood sugars. My blood sugars have been pretty good. This is working for me. Are you losing weight? If not, then we start to whittle away a little bit at some of the portions to help you with some of the weight loss. Does that make sense? Typically, 2 slices of that is equal to 1 slice of regular. So if you're using regular whole grain bread at home, and we would encourage you to use whole wheat, because whole wheat is one of those super heavier, denser breads.
Yeah.
They're bigger loaves, they have bigger slices, they weigh more, they're thicker.
Oh, I've seen it.
So we're going to talk about some label reading. So how do you read? So now you want to look at the label to try to figure out how much carbohydrate you're eating. What do you usually look at on the label when you look at a label? What's the most, where do you go to first usually?
Serving size.
Serving size, you're looking at sodium because you had to pay attention to your salt intake, right?
I look at carbs.
You look at the carbs, okay, okay,
Then I look at the fat.
all right, okay. Calories and sodium, all right. I know, and it's like, oh my God, you know, how many of you, it takes hours to go through the grocery store because you're looking at every label. The most important information on the label really is the serving size, because you got to really ask yourself, okay, what am I eating versus what are they telling me is a serving? When you buy has anybody ever bought muffins from Stop and Shop? Have you ever looked at the serving size when you get the 4-packs and you flip it over and the nutrition information's on the bottom?
They're very, very high.
What's the serving size though of the muffin?
Well, sometimes they
Yes.
tell, oh, go ahead.
It's a half a muffin.
Ah,
It's a half a muffin, okay? And so, you know, when you look at the carbs, you go, oh, that's not so bad. It's 37. Well, that's only for half the muffin. Most people don't realize that they don't eat half the muffin, they eat the whole thing. So, So you need to, all right, so always look at the serving size and then ask yourself, is this what I'm eating? Am I eating more or am I eating less? And then look at the total carbs, because that's what we're interested in. The total carbohydrate includes the starch, the sugar, the fiber you get in one serving, okay? And we're trying to stick to 3 servings or about 45 grams of carbohydrate at a meal. Guys, they get more. They get 60, okay? So if you can kind of just work on that in the course of the next week, looking at your labels, trying to balance your meals so that you're getting about 45 grams of carbohydrate. Now, how about breakfast? Now, our breakfast doesn't look like this, right, usually? So what are we going to do for breakfast? How could we, does anybody have an idea what kind of breakfast would give them about 45 grams of carbohydrate?
Breakfast for me is very tough. It seems to be the same thing most of the time. Cereal.
So you use cereal.
Cereal, banana in my milk.
Okay.
You know, it's
So-
a tough meal to get something different.
So some of the carbohydrates coming from cereal, a banana, we count, a whole banana counts as 2 servings of fruit, so that's about 30 grams of carbohydrate. The cereal alone, a cup of cereal is about 20 to 25. And then half a cup of milk is about 6. So that brings her to about 50, okay? So what else could we do if we didn't like to do cereal? I'm not a big cereal buff, so.
Yeah, what else? Yeah, I would like to know that too. 'Cause
Okay.
I'm sick of it.
Well, you could do an English muffin. An English muffin counts as 2 servings of carbohydrates, so that's about 30 grams. And then you could have a piece of fruit to go with that. You could have some strawberries, or you could have some watermelon, or you could have some,
Yeah, you just can't have that.
you could if you wanted to. Some people just are not big breakfast
Yeah,
eaters.
to me, fruit, what I have to eat, I couldn't eat 50 carbs of fruit.
No, I'm saying,
You
but
know,
having
for
it with it
breakfast.
like a whole grain English muffin. Now, what else would you put in? Yeah, so
right.
it would be with the
Okay.
English muffin, not just fruit.
Oh, okay.
You could have toast, 2 slices of whole grain toast. Now, what else do you want to put on the toast? Peanut butter. Because what else helps? We talked about having some protein at every meal, because protein's a good way to rebuild some of those cells. And so protein is not carbohydrate, and so it's not going to add any more sugar to your meal either. So what are your protein foods? It could be an egg, it could be egg whites, it could be peanut butter, it could be a slice of cheese, and if you're not wanting to eat a lot of fat in your cheese, you could stick to the low-fat cheese.
Which is hard. Yes.
Well, it depends on what you buy, though. Not all of them are hard. Okay.
I've tried a lot of them. They are, oh my God.
Cottage cheese is another thing that people like in the morning, sometimes with a little bit of fruit. Now, you can buy it already mixed together with the pineapple.
I get that.
Half a cup counts as a carb,
Right.
but it's got some protein in it too. So that would be one of your carbohydrate servings.
Now that 15 on the cottage cheese, it's got to be the pineapple, because when you look
Right.
at the other, out the fruit,
Yeah,
like fat-free or something, it's got nothing.
yeah,
So it's got to be the pineapple that raises that, the carbs on that.
yeah, it does. You're right. Okay, so homework to go home is look at trying to put together some combinations of foods that's going to give you around 45 grams of carbohydrate at a meal. Guys, a little bit more, 60, okay, at least 60. And then come back next week. We're going to talk about how you put some of those meals together. But you got to be careful with your sugar-free products. The only thing that means is that they didn't add sugar to it. They may be using concentrated juice to sweeten the product. And they can get away with it saying it's no sugar added because they didn't add sugar. They added concentrated grape juice or apple juice or pear juice. So,
Which has carbs.
carbs, yes. So you really just have to, if you have a label, yes. So the total is the total. It includes everything. And then down below that, it sometimes will give you like how many grams of fiber. Cereal will give you fiber, sugar, and other carbohydrates, usually on a box of cereal because they have a big label to use up, and so they give you more information. But most, The only thing that's required by the USDA and the FDA is the total carbohydrates and fiber on the label, okay?
Excuse me, I was told that you were supposed to deduct the fiber from the carbs.
We'll talk more about that because for
That's
foods,
what I've been doing.
yeah,
You know, like if it says 15 carbs, fiber free, I
That's
was
just-
told to deduct the fiber because that is sugar.
you can.
So how does that work then?
Because most fiber is not absorbed into the body. It's fiber, if you want to think of fiber, fiber is like a big Brillo pad. It kind of cleans off the walls of your intestines, keeps them nice and clean, and then it gets eliminated when you have a bowel movement. So a lot of the carbohydrates from fiber doesn't end up in your bloodstream. So that's one of the reasons you can subtract.
So why is it so important for you to have fiber?
Because fiber helps to keep you regular, first of all. Soluble fiber helps, we're going to talk more about how we lower our cholesterol. Fiber, a lot of fiber in food helps to lower your cholesterol level. So, and fiber is important in your diet. Snack, or you could do yogurt as a snack in between.
have 3 meals and
3 meals, and it depends on really what you like. We encourage 3 meals and at least 1 snack at the end of the day. Okay, because remember we have that liver that loves to give you sugar in the morning, and sometimes having a light snack before you go to bed helps to quiet down the liver.
so before bed is the best time to have the snack. If
So-
you do, while you're eating, have it.
Yep, and it depends on your meals. If you, if you're going more than 6 hours between a meal, you really should be eating meals about 4 to 5 hours apart. If you go longer than that, because that's your schedule, then you should add a snack somewhere in between. Okay? So 4 to 5 hours apart between meals. If you go longer than that, please add a snack. And a snack should be small. It's not a huge snack. We're not having a meal as a snack.
That's what happens a lot of times if you can't get to food. You either end up overeating or if you don't have that little snack.
Right.
Or you just say, I'm starving. And
Yeah, then you end up,
there.
you can't
Not being
control it as
regularly grabbed.
easily. And so we want to be able to control our portions a little bit better. So using snacks are really helpful in helping us eat less, actually. It seems like you eat more. You feel like you eat more, right? Didn't you say you felt like you were eating all the time, but she had great weight loss?
What I like about this plate is in the back, it tells you what the serving sizes are. So
Yeah.
each serving is equal to 15. So what I'd like you to start for this week is to practice that. You got 3 servings, figure out what 1 serving is. Put 3 together, that's your 45, guys get 4, that's your 60. So I want you to practice. What I like about it is it's kind of a short list, very general. Next week, you're going to get a very detailed list with lots and lots of food for you to kind of do some things outside the box. But in the meantime, kind of practice getting your 3 meals. 3 meals, so you're eating, first it's like, for me, it's all about rules. Rule number 1, 3 meals a day. If you're not getting 3 meals a day, try to find a way to get 3 meals a day. If you're not even doing that, it's hard to get to rule number 2. Rule number 2, like no more than 4 to 5 hours without eating. So you kind of look and say, well, how long am I going in between? Make sure each meal has 3 servings of carbohydrates. If you're going to have a snack, it's 1 serving. So if you're going to need to eat something in the afternoon, it's going to be 1 serving of carbohydrates, about 15. And then about 15 before you go to bed. Is that simple?
Is
So if you
everybody
can
okay?
focus on that until next week, you're going to come back going, well, what about salads? Well, what about meals that are soups? Well, what about stir fries? Well, what about this? Well, what about that? And I want to hear all of your what abouts because that's how we're gonna put together. Next week is going to be focused on taking those. How do you do that? How do you fit into? But you said this, but how do I fit this in? And then we're going to kind of practice with that. It also gives everybody else ideas. Gail says, oh, breakfast. I'm so tired of having cereal for breakfast. Well, she may have a great breakfast that you would love. And so share it. So share some of the meals that you're doing, and then we'll critique them in a way. We'll kind of look at them and say, oh, how was your breakfast? And then we'll kind of fit them into those rules to see what needs to change. And so we'll focus on that on next week. Make
Okay.
sense? Now, the reason that we selected the Heritage State Park as our location is to truly try to encourage people to walk. So, of course, I forgot my walking shoes this week, but I'd really like you to think about wearing some comfortable shoes and really getting some walking in to try to help with getting in that routine of exercise. So it's a great location for that. So definitely use that to your advantage. Of course, I'm going to force you to walk, but certainly it's a great place to walk, great weather, and it's still cool enough that you can walk in the middle of the day. So really think about that and wear some comfortable shoes and get some walking in as well. All right? Any questions about what we've talked about? No. All right, so see you next week, same time, same bat station.
Looks like that's it.
Same bat station.